Hey, Lisa.
Okay, we are in. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to hang up now because I'm
Thank
getting
you.
reverb stuff.
Gotcha. Thanks, Brian.
Hello.
Everybody here, my video is not sharing.
I had to enable mine by clicking the bottom left corner of the screen.
Got it. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We're having some adoption difficulties. Happy February. How y'all doing?
Okay.
Happy February.
So fast this year is going.
I guess.
That's my Yoda impression. Not correct English. Anyway, I'm Lisa. I'll be your host today. Oh, Nick is on the phone. He's our chapter president. Hey, Deborah. Hi, Sean. Pam. I see Christine.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm just getting settled in myself here. I think we're all kind of running a little wonky on to this one, but I'm so glad to see everyone. There's already so many people joining, and it's so awesome to see how how it's grown and people from all over can come. So we just appreciate you guys so much for being here. Lisa's going to conduct the meeting tonight, and a really great speaker, and really excited about that. I'm just going to turn it over to her and go from there. So thank you everyone for coming, and I'm so glad that you're here with us tonight.
Actually, Nick, keep talking because I'm trying to enable the share screen.
Okay, sure. So for those newcomers who haven't been here in the past, we normally meet in person. We have we meet at the Harupa Mountains Discovery Center in Harupa Valley, California, and we have a small orchard, about an acre. We have a citrus orchard. We meet up on the weekends. We do different training sessions. A lot of the stuff you pay a lot of money for, we actually just offer it for free. So it really is a great way to learn a lot. There's an annual membership, which is minimal, and they'll discuss more about that. But it's just a great place for resources. I've been here about 3 years now, the chairman, and I've been a part of the group about 5-6 years. So it's been just a wonderful blessing for me, and everyone's so nice. Everyone's we share. We have potlucks usually in person, so we'll bring a bunch of rare stuff from our yards to share. We'll have great speakers, teach you how to graft, teach you how to propagate your own stuff so you can save money that way too. So, we're just trying to be a resource for people to come to and to grow with us, in many more ways than one. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys being here tonight, and it's great to see how many people are actually joining these meetings. So it's great that we have a big, influx of people that are interested. Let's see. So anything else I forgot to mention? We have some events coming up pretty soon. We'll discuss more about that, about the specific dates, but we do plant sales once a year. We also just passed this past weekend, not last weekend, the weekend before, we had a meetup to where we traded scions for grafting and different cuttings and things, so we can, propagate all kinds of different rare fruits, rare varieties. It's a time to save money right now, but it's also, there's a wonderful opportunity with technology and everything that we all can meet up and do fun things. So we want to plan more and do a lot bigger stuff in the future. We have a lot of plans, and when we can start meeting up again, that'll be great. We really look forward to that time. So in the meantime, we just we want to enjoy each other's company on Zoom. If there's anything you'd like to add, type it in the comments. Any kind of questions, we'll try to answer for you. And I think that's all about it. So whenever you're ready, Lisa, we can have you started up.
I'm gonna actually be about 5 minutes here. We're still having a few people come in, and Christine, can you unmute and let them know about what's happening in the orchard for the pruning and scion grafting?
Well, we're planning to have a grafting / more pruning and maybe grafting workshop on February 13th at the orchard. Our demonstration orchard is at the Harupa Mountains Discovery Center in Riverside. And we will post that on our Facebook page, more details. We're going to do it socially distancing, so it'll be small groups and we'll have to be all spread out. So I see that we could do the pruning, that it's easy to show pruning and be, several feet apart, but I'm not quite sure how we can do grafting. I was tossing some ideas around on how to do that and still be spread apart. But our orchard is, if you're unsure about pruning or grafting and would like some practice, come practice on our orchard. That's what it's for. So make your mistakes on our trees and then go home and do your trees better. So it'll be from 9, the orchard or the venue opens at 9. It doesn't open to the public unless things change between now and then. Because of the COVID, they're still closed as far as I know, but they let us in at 9 o'clock. So we have to gather at the gate and be there on time so we can all get let in at 9 o'clock. And then we can stay as late as 2 o'clock is when they usually close.
Nice. All right.
Did that work?
Yes. Now you can also put it in screen in presentation mode.
Yes. I was just waiting to make sure.
Yeah. So let me work on your presentation, your introduction while you do that. So if I could, just a few housekeeping rules as we get our presentation underway with Brian Levine. Make sure that you do disable any chimes, noises, buzzers, anything on your devices. That includes muting your cell phone if you have that, and any crazy dogs, chickens, or any other animals that you might have in the background. But Brian comes to us from Northern California, where he is the chapter president of the Golden Gate California Rare Fruit Growers Association. And he is coming today to share his adventures in rare fruit growing in the subtropical climate. And I hope you find this talk interesting, open up your eyes to new and various fruits that you have not heard before, that you can possibly grow in your backyard, and maybe we can snag some samples and put it into the Harupa Mountain Cultural Center as well and grow them there. But Brian is also going to be talking to us on a few species, on how to process them and preserve them as well, and how to eat those fruits. All right. So Brian, are you ready?
I think so. So this, I realized at 3 a.m. last night that this talk really is kind of should be split into two, because it's one talk that's too long on two topics. So I guess I will ask at various points if you guys want to jump around or not. Because I think the group is, it's not too unwieldy that if, say, you guys are more interested in, say, American fruits, we can jump there first, even though that's at the end. Or if you want to say, Australian, we can jump there first, just in case we run out of time. So you'll probably just, if we go too long, just cut me off, I guess. Okay, so I'll just start, I guess. So the first part of this talk really is, it's a short intro in how I kind of select things. So the four kind of points that I like to think about is what my climate is, what my microclimates are, the genetics of the species I'm picking, and the geographical origin of those like plant species, where they're coming from. So so most of California, you have the coastal climates, which they can be warm or cold, but they're not usually different in how much they change. For instance, San Francisco has zone 10, but it doesn't get very hot. So in that regard, you don't have chill hours and you don't really freeze there. And that's similar all the way down through San Diego. The coasts are basically very stable. It may be warmer or colder, but even Humboldt has areas where it's zone 10 near the coast. So as you go inland, you get more heat, but you also get bigger swings of cold in winter and night. So that's something else to keep in mind for your zone. So yes, the USDA and sunset zones aren't perfect, but they are something to help you figure out what the minimums are, how much heat you might get. For the microclimates, and in this regard, sometimes smaller like properties are better than larger ones because the houses are closer together. And so all those cement structures radiate heat at night. That bumps you up. So I have an area where I grow peanut butter fruit. It hasn't fruited like most of them in California, but it gets through winter fine. And it does that by putting it in an area where it's getting a lot of night radiation of cement heat. And it's also near an overhang, which stops that evaporative heat loss to the sky at night. So in my backyard, a place where I can put things that should not be growing here, as long as they're in pots, I can move them under a redwood, and that stops the frost. Or it did stop the frost. I don't get frost anymore in the last 5 to 7 years, just because it's slowly warming every year. But the other thing you should think about is on the topography of where you're growing. So if it's on a hill, the cold air will flow downwards and not just sit there. If you're unlucky and you're in a, or lucky, I guess, and you're at the bottom of a hill in a little like pit, you might get cold air sticking around, so you'll get more chill. And that's good or bad, depending on what you want to grow. So when I mean what climate the species comes from, I'm thinking it helps you predict how it will do here. So other Mediterranean areas, which I have some maps, which I'll show real quick, are similar to California. So that's fine. Semi-subtropics usually can take some cold. Semi-arid, same thing. They can take some cold. Cloud forests take cold, but they do burn in the heat. So that may be a problem for you guys if you don't have something from a cloud forest in shade in the summer. Temperate things, they're temperature tolerant, but you do need you do need enough chill usually. And then cold rainforests. So the example might be the Pacific Northwest, where it's something needs a lot of water, but it can take the cold. It may not take the heat though, so that's something to keep in mind. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on these maps. These are just maps that show you some of the different regions where, say, Mediterranean climates are. So you can see that, say, South America, that Andes region, or South Africa. These are up for debate a little bit, the exact zone. So don't worry if you disagree. But then you can see subtropics, warm temperate. There's southern South America, the southeast. Most of the continents have at least some region. Semi-arid. So these are areas near the desert, usually, or on borders on it. Cloud forest. So things like white sapote, Andean walnut, and then tree tomatoes may occur here that you may try. Then genetics. There are certain plant families, for whatever reason, that if you had to guess whether or bet money on whether it would survive, it was some cold, your bet would be a little safer. So things like in the rose family, citrus, guava, tend to just do better, even if they come from warm climates with cold, than some of the other species. So almost everything in the Brazil nut family does bad when it gets cold. But you can take, and it helps because they're usually on mountains, but you know, in tropical areas, you say, or warmer areas, Capulan cherry, that does fine with some cold. So it's just, if you have to guess, certain groups do better than others. Okay, so this next part, I just go into species accounts, and especially for some of the Mediterranean fruits, I have some of the uses in a general sense. Does anybody want me just to go in order, or should we pick certain regions? I have a kind of a European Mediterranean area, Africa, Australia, Asia, and then the Americas I lumped together because I assumed I'd be running out of time by then.
Americans, I think.
Americas, we want to go, we can go to the end, do the Americas first.
Okay.
So we'll jump down there. We're getting there. There is some lying in this, because sometimes I lumped a few things together because most of them occurred one area. But so the interesting thing about the Americas is it extends from the Arctic to the Antarctic area almost. And you have a range of mountains that goes down it, which means you have things in the Andes, you have things in the Rockies, in the mountains of Mexico. So basically there's a lot of like interesting things you can try in different groups. So most of these do, the almonds and the hog plums are kind of mango-like relatives, although you usually eat them when they're sour, right? Is anyone growing this?
I never even see it, those.
Okay, they do appear in the LA nurseries. Now that Tibetan mambin, which is not an American one, actually is super cold hardy. The problem is that we don't have, all the ones in California I've seen are male, and you need a male and female. It survives up here just fine in places colder than I am. But Stephen Murray says he has a lot and that he might have females. So maybe fruit and seeds of these will show up. I have not been able to get viable seeds. But the other ones do not take frost very well. I kept one for a couple years alive and it did fruit in a pot. The purple red one apparently tastes best if you don't want to use it as a sour fruit. People pick them green and they use them as sour, put some salt on them. So you can buy them that way in Mexican markets in Mexico. I don't know if they sell them up here though. But there's multiple species, and the Tibetan one is the most cold hardy. That one would definitely work for you guys, but I just don't know where to obtain it. Like, so, because everyone I know has a male tree. So pawpaw. So the trick with pawpaw is it likes shade when it's young. Even if it can take the sun in, say, winter or spring and fall in some places, in summer it starts to burn, I found out, if it's in full sun, because it's an understory tree. What can you expect flavor-wise? It's a banana type taste usually. Some of the, they'd say more select cultivars will have tropically tasting ones too. All the ones I've had tried so far, like say wild forage, say in the southeast, would have been banana flavored though. But it is not hard to graft these either. So if you get seeds, you cold stratify them, but you have to do a moist cold strat. So plastic baggie in your refrigerator with some moist dirt or peat or something like that, about 2 months, and then you just plant it, and you need to keep it moist, which is an issue in California. It will sprout, and when it's big enough, just do a cleft graft. You let the rootstock wake up first, and the scion will still be asleep because you've been keeping it in the fridge. Just the cleft graft will work 100% of the time for me. The trick is that they're structurally like weak, so the wind or an animal can knock them off easily. So I just keep them tied, or I retie them for a few more months while they get a little stronger. But they're not hard to propagate, and there is some debate over the nonotoxin, but hopefully it's not that big a deal because they're easy to grow and they do taste good. So this is one that you can do. Just keep it shaded until it gets older. It's fly pollinated too, so you do need 2 for most of them. And some people even put like meat under them that's rotting to attract the flies, and the flies do the pollination. So if you are in a very nice microclimate,
I
cherry
used to have one of
Moya,
those.
what?
I used to have one of those trees.
Oh, cool.
Very hard to pollinate though. I used to
uh,
pollinate it by hand.
Yeah, so a lot of these
Extremely hard
anonas
though.
need beetles, and we don't have the beetles up here usually, or some people, there's a pest beetle I heard may pollinate them, like a pest of something else. But cherry Moya is the one you want to try if you have a microclimate that's mild. It's the only one that I can really say is widely adapted to California. I'm kind of at the limit even here for it as far as going east. Cherimoya, these other ones do graft on Cherimoya typically, but it doesn't, and it does give it a little boost because the roots don't shut down in winter, but they don't really, it doesn't really give it any extra cold hardiness, at least the top. So they still die usually. But if you have a little greenhouse, if you can keep it hotter, the other ones are foodable in pots sometimes. Like a plastic greenhouse, if you can keep it above 32 and have it grafted on a cherimoya. But they all do require that hand pollination usually because we don't have the pollinator up here. There are a few varieties of cherimoya that will, because the timing gets thrown off, I think. And I'm not sure of that, but that seems
Mine were from Peru. The seeds actually from Peru. And
Yeah.
I had that tree for 10 years. Huge tree.
So one of the reasons why these are kind of probably dependable by seed too, is that a lot of fruits, like they consider them wild, but these were selected in South America by the civilizations down there. And so it's the same as getting the genetics got stabilized, I think. So even if those civilizations went away, a lot of they didn't really go away in some ways because like they were kept around the towns and stuff. And anyway, like you usually get something good from, at least decent, growing from seed. A lot of the store-bought ones are not good though because they picked them too early. So if you get them from California if you can, because they taste a lot better. If you do buy a store-bought one though, if you plant the seeds, you will get something better than that store-bought fruit usually, because at least you'll wait till it's ripe, right?
Yeah.
So,
but it's very difficult though to do the hand pollination because I used to do it. It's very hard.
For the sure thing, you need to do that in California. This one, I tend to leave this out when I do an area that's colder, but I did find one fruiting in the Bay Area directly next to a house. So it may be possible to grow this in colder areas and get some fruit if you actually do it. It is kind of a novelty though. You have to be careful as it ripens because it has a lot of that oxalic acid in it until it's ripe. It's that glass, the little glass shards that taste that. So yeah, but it does taste kind of like a pineapple. Palms. So my favorite palms come from South America. They're also cold hardy. So the Chilean wine palm takes a while to fruit, and it's also expensive if you don't grow it from seed. But it's little coconuts. They're like macadamia in a way, though, where I have to use a hammer to smash them, and if you hit them wrong, they go flying. But my favorite is the jelly palm. So the jelly palm stays a lot smaller. The only well, it's not the only way, but it's typically propagated by seed. So it's best to pick one that tastes good and grow that. They can be anywhere from apricot flavored to peach flavored to banana pineapple mixes. They can also, if they're bad, they kind of have this palm funk to them, which is hard to describe, but you'll figure it out if you try one. So then there's the molassesy, like the Guadalupe Island palms. That's the B. edulis I have there, and that's what the pictures are. They're very sweet, but there's not much flesh to them. That's the only problem, and they sometimes ferment on the tree. Date palms are another thing, but I don't grow those, so I don't talk about them very much, but the hotter areas of California do. If you can keep them alive, there are varieties where you can cut them early and kind of ripen them off the palm. I do not remember off the top of my head now which ones those are, but they did appear in a San Diego CRFG newsletter a long time ago that I haven't been able to find. But so it is possible to grow them if you can keep them alive, but not ripen the normal fruit. This one's probably too tender for you guys. The Malabar chestnuts from, there's more than one species around usually. It's a nut tree, but it's from, the Mexican ones are the ones I've seen around, but it's probably not, I can keep them alive a year or two, but they usually die at some point. And I think they die for you guys too, so I'll go on. Cactus. So my favorite cactus do not have thorns on the fruit. So there's dragon fruit, which I won't really go into. Marta probably went into that last time you had her talk. I really like the Peruvian apple cactuses. Good ones are sweet and there's no thorns. So that's the first picture. There are really no, as far as I can tell, I haven't been able to find a poisonous cactus fruit. I've just found ones that aren't very good. Some of them do have acid in them, which gives them a little more tang. Those ones can be made into drinks. So some of the South American ones will be acidic, and you can make a juice out of them, or like a slushy or something. The blueberry cactus does have a blueberry taste to it. That one also doesn't have thorns on the little fruits, but they're little. Some of the other ones, people have told me to knock them off with sticks if they have thorns on them, but the sticks always go into the fruit then, and then you have thorns in the fruit. And I just like that. Apuntia. So the best Apuntia I have had actually came from Riverside County, and they have good flavors. Strawberry. I can't describe what one of them tasted like, but the other one then tasted like melon, depending on what color they were. And the store-bought ones were kind of terrible though. So if you find a good one, just propagate it. I found a seedless one, but the seedless one wasn't any good. This is probably best for processing rather than eating straight, just because the seeds are really, really hard, and you'll break a tooth if you don't know what you're doing.
Yes, that's too nice.
But the fruit is really good if it's from a good variety, which I'd like to stress, because I thought people were joking about how it's going to be the fruit of the future in as things dry, but some of them are actually pretty good, and it's easy to cut them if you cut them like I kind of did in the picture below there, where I put a long slice into them and just cut off the ends and then just peel them open.
Open it up. That's the way actually you cut it.
Okay. It took me a while to figure that out, but it's actually not that bad, and I just eat them with a spoon. But I can see juicing them too, making lemonade type drinks that are sweet instead. Some people have made wine out of them. Papayas. I'm going to skip this one because I think Marta talked about oak leaf papaya last time. Oak leaf is a little berry papaya, and it's cold hardy down to 22, 23 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it has little papayas, but it can have thousands of them. So when it gets tree size. So it's one you can grow in cold climates. Just don't let the roots get super wet. Garcinia, so mangosteen relatives. The only one, if you like to play with these, the ones I would try are African mangosteen, the imbi. That one's the most cold hardy, and it also can take some sun. Then Garcinia dulcis and Xenacanthia, I forget which one. It's growing at Fullerton. Those are the two that seem most cold hardy for me, besides the African one. But they want more heat than I have, and you guys may have that heat. So those are the three that I would try. These are still kind of experimental in California because most people haven't got fruit and everyone's playing with these. This photo is actually from Fullerton Arboretum of unripe fruit. Okay, I put persimmon here, even though of the Asian one, because most of them are, well, two of them I'm talking, or three I'm talking about are American. So, of the Asian persimmon, there's actually a lot of varieties, right? There's ones that are astringent until they're pollinated. They're astringent if they're not pollinated. I like the ones that are brown fleshed. So I like coffee cake, which tastes like coffee to me. There's chocolate, which is a variety. Hirakuma is another variety I like. The American persimmon is something you might want to grow because it has a lot of small fruit. These small fruit will dry by themselves, and you can actually do the Japanese persimmon drying by just leaving them on a plate, as long as the conditions are kind of not too wet. And then they taste kind of like raisins a little bit. The Americans do get to be bigger trees, but you can keep them pruned. Then there's date plum, which has very sweet, very small fruit, but there's a lot of them. That's the European species. Now, so do signs of these show up at your exchange? Of these persimmons? We
have persimmon in our orchard.
Okay, so Marta has done some of this too. She's done more than me actually, but persimmon grafting, we had problems grafting the American. And it turns out that the American rootstock will take the Asian and the American, but the Asian rootstock will not take the American, at least every time that we have tried. Since everyone back east uses the American as rootstock, no one could tell us that. So a lot of people in the northern chapters, I think, failed to graft American when they try and graft it on khaki. Now, if you have the date plum, that one seems to take both other species, but maybe after a decade or two, you will see a kind of a growth ring where it's growing faster on the top than the bottom, but we haven't seen them fail yet. But okay, so that's my little persimmon grafting. Also, a lot of people had told me to bud graft and chip. I just do cleft grafts now because they're easier. And same thing as the pawpaws. You let the rootstock wake up and then graft the dormant scion to it, and it takes fine. So you may have to wait till April to graft, but it's fine. They're fine in the fridge that long. And they seem to have a high percentage of take as long as the rootstock is growing well. So black sapote, the trick here is that not all black sapote are equally cold hardy. And I mean, it's just a guess, but I suspect there are mountain species that may have put their genetics into these, and some of them have it and some of them don't. I have a few that I can keep outdoors all year, and then other ones just die the first winter. It helps if they have wood on them, so baby them. But this is something where if you can have an area next to the house that stays above 32 degrees Fahrenheit, or just drops a little lower but doesn't get frost, you could probably get these by. People have a problem with these because it does not taste like chocolate pudding usually, but they have their nice points. And I would look into the, again, I think it's a Mexican drink where you mix it with orange juice and you stir it in. I can't remember whether I talked to someone from Mexico or Guatemala about that, but in one of those countries, they said the traditional use would be to mix it with orange juice and drink it. But some of them taste very nice. I would look for the selected varieties then, because some are male and female or both. The selected ones are usually both. And you may see this as, I think, Zapote Negro is, hopefully I'm not butchering it. So Texas persimmon is something that has small fruit, but I'm going to plug here because I think it should be more widely grown. It has a very sweet licorice-like taste. So some people don't like black licorice because of the bitter flavor. This doesn't have that. This just has the good part, and it's super sweet. You can make it into jam. I've heard it stains, but I haven't tested it. But you can wash it out apparently. And I really like these. They have a good flavor. They're just kind of small.
Oh my God, I love those.
So Inga are ice cream beans. So the trick here is that there's like over 400 species, and some of them have different flavors. Some of them have, and they all have different tolerances to the cold temperatures. There's about 2 species I know up here that actually have fruited so far, but you guys can probably get away with a few more. But not necessarily. I think the real edulous may be tropical, but there are 2 or 3 species floating around Southern California. The big problem is they get into huge trees. That can be a good thing if it's burning back every year, but if it's not, some of them get oak tree size, and it's very hard to harvest them. It's kind of a novelty fruit because you rip open the pods and kind of have to suck off each thing, so you can't eat like 50 at once. But I like them, and there is a way. I have not found the actual recipe yet, but they make a fermented beer-like drink out of it in South America. It's sweet enough to ferment, basically. So yeah. So avocados. So there are avocados that people can grow throughout most of California. But the picture on the right is actually coyo. So coyo is a more Central American species that's a relative. I have not tasted it yet, unfortunately, but it's supposed to have other flavors. So some of them have an onion flavor with the avocado, or like a ham flavor, supposedly. It occurs up to 5,000 meters. So I tried it, and it survives winter for me. It grafts onto regular avocado too. It's not every avocado species does, but this one grafts onto the normal avocado you just buy in the store. So this is something probably worth trying in California. The leaves are bigger and they're fuzzy, but other than that, it's very avocado-ish. And again, I just did a cleft graft in August up here, but as long as the rootstock's growing and you can do avocado grafts, it's probably worth trying. So acerola is something you probably can't grow. But if you really, really want to grow this, there is a cold hardy species from southern Texas and northern Mexico, and the fruit looks the same. It just doesn't taste the same. I heard it's a little worse, but it's hardy into the 20s. So there is a species you can grow if you really must grow this one. Fojoya. So how many of you have tried a fojoya and like it? Okay, or have tried it. If you really want that pineapple-y minty taste though, they have to ripen before or after heat, I've been told. So there are varieties that I have tasted near the coast that I loved, and I brought them out here further inland, and they were kind of terrible. And then some of them that were good out here did not taste good by the coast. So this is something where you have to kind of experiment with the varieties and ripening times. So keep that in mind as the New Zealand cultivars show up. that they may or may not be good for you guys. You just have to experiment. I graft these in April when they're growing. So treat them like a citrus or subtropical grafting. And sorry, you may hear a dog barking on my end. So Hexaclemys edulis, the name of this changes sometimes, but it's a very it has a garlicky type smell to it. It's very juicy, and it may actually be 4 species. This tree I took a picture of is in Santa Barbara, and the fruit just falls on the ground. But it looks like it might be cold hardy. So if you want something unusual, I've seen these at the Orange County green scene for sale before, and occasionally around Southern California, people sell these. So it's something that seems to survive. So it's worth trying if you're interested in weird things. Okay, so the Eugenia berries. I kind of tried to rank them in cold hardiness here. Cherry of the Rio Grande is the most cold hardy, and it tastes like an actual cherry. Suriname cherry, it has that smooth flavor. It can be a little eucalyptusy in some of them. That's usually the next cold hardiest. Bitoma and Grumachama, I can actually have damage on them, so I keep them somewhere warm or next to a wall. And same with Cedar Bay cherry, which is a little bit more, a little less cold hardy. Batenga tuba, I'm not sure yet. That's the fruit at the bottom of the slide on the right side. It kind of is a sour one, but people like it. Like it's like you know how the Starburst candy kind of gets you salivating? It does that. And it fruits within a year or two. That's the nice thing about that one. Now, the thing is, it will only carry a fruit or two usually for me the first year, but the next year it has 2 fruits. Then maybe the third year it has 5, and then it starts bearing a lot of fruit, and it doesn't get big either. Now, besides the cherry of the Rio Grande and the Suriname cherry, the other ones do like lower pHs. So like a blueberry, they want some acid in the soil. And if they start throwing yellow leaves, or even whitish things, it's too cold, or you need to lower the pH. That's just to let you know. Most of Eugenias are worth a shot if you see seeds, unless they come from tropical lowlands like the Amazon. So if you can Google where the species comes from, they're worth trying as long as it's not tropical usually. Okay, guavas. Almost every guava I've tried has survived, and it eventually fruits. You can guess how cold hardy they are usually by, have you seen a strawberry guava or a lemon guava? Okay, the leaves are hard and they're shiny, and the more they look like that, the more cold hardy they are. The more they look like tropical guava leaves, the less cold hardy they are. I think, let's see, I fruited the 3 or 4 of the things on this list, and the other plants, it's just they're on their way. They haven't died yet. The one I have not listed on here is STRAI something. It's the narrow-leaved guava. It actually tasted really good. It was like a banana strawberry taste mixed with guava. That one's on the closer to tropical guava in hardiness, but it's worth trying, I think, just because it tasted really good. And it's starting to show up places, seeds and plants. So that one might be worth trying. But there is a guava you can grow as long as you stay above 20. Jaboticaba, the big problem is just how long it takes. It looks like people who have pruned their trunks so that the trunk actually gets some light, speeds up fruiting a little bit, as long as your tree is the right size. There's lots of jaboticabas, and again, they like the lower pH usually. Some are more sensitive than others. That guajabiju, though, is cold hardy, and it's a jaboticaba-like fruit for people with cold hardy climates that don't want to wait 10 years maybe. They fruit potentially within 4 or 5 years from seed. Mine threw flowers last year, but I didn't water it enough, and it eventually dropped the stuff. It comes from the same area Fajoya comes from, and I'm pretty sure you guys could definitely grow that one. I'm not sure if the plants are available yet or just the seeds, but this is that's one that I would try if you don't want to wait a decade and you want a Java de Cabo like fruit, and you want I don't want to say it's a sure thing, but it's shown no cold damage for me, and I don't do much for it. Okay. This is something I just want to make you aware of. This genus has a lot of fruiting stuff, but a lot of people, this is something people are trying with, but we don't know which ones are cold hardy yet. It's another guava family thing though. So fuchsia, if you want to try these berries, shade and lots of water. They do not like heat. The picture of the one at the top though is Splendens, which is the one that responds to heat the best, but that's in shade with lots of water. It does okay in summer. But the berries do have a lemony taste. So rather than being insipid or weird, the berries aren't bad. So I would try Splendens if you want to try a fuchsia type fruit. Just keep it shade and in the shade, like deep shade, and water it a lot in summer. Passion fruit. There are lots of species to try. There is probably one that you can definitely grow if you really want a passion fruit. It's just if you're really cold, it might have to be maypop. So maypop is the one from the eastern US. It's more of an annual in a way though, as in it dies back in winter. Well, I guess it's not I mean, the vegetative stuff is annual. It comes back from the roots. So that's one you can do if you can't grow other passion fruit.
There is one passion fruit that grows really good in California, Southern California, is the passion fruit edulis.
Oh,
basically on summer, that's grows like crazy.
Yeah, so depending on the area, there's lots of species you can grow. But the maypops ones say that if you can't grow the other ones because you get too cold in winter, and say they die every year, that one doesn't care because the roots are underground and it's going to die back anyway. But the one in the picture is one that's better for the coast up here. So I don't think you guys should try like the banana shaped passion fruits. You can, but they may not. They may kind of burn out.
And what about the flowers? How do they look? Are they beautiful as well?
Yeah, so the flowers look about the same. This one has white flowers actually, but so you'll know it's a passion fruit. But if it just depends with the species you grow, depends on how much heat you get and how much cold you get basically. And sometimes different varieties do different, because people grow. This is another thing, people grow for flowers. So sometimes they don't test to see if the fruit's good first. So white sapote is one plant that I think everyone should be growing. This shouldn't be a rare fruit. I think it is because it's hard to ship some of them. But it fruits so much, it's not objectionable in any way to most people. And the woolly sapote, if you find that, it's a little less cold hardy, and it may not graft to every white sapote, but the flavor is a little more complex. And the varieties you want to look for they're actually called this, number 6 and number 7. They don't have real names. Those were the ones in an old CRFG case test, I think probably from before I was born, rated as the highest. And I had them at San Luis Obispo at that festival of fruit. And they're like white sapote, but the flavor is a little more complex. So it's beyond lemony or just sweet or something like that. True sapotes. If you're going to try these, lucuma is the most cold hardy. And again, it's another Andean thing. So the Incas had their hands in this, just like the cherimoya. The next cold hardiness is green sapote. So you probably have heard mammy sapote can be problematic in California because it has to get the fruit through winter. It wants heat to grow, even at night. But green sapote, just like that koyo, has a high elevational gradient where it occurs in Central America, and it'll be up in the mountains. So green sapote survives fine for me. And it actually, someone has fruited it up here in the Bay Area. So that's the one to try. You just need to be careful because the ones from Florida that you will see at nurseries are on mammy sapote roots. And that seems to cause problems in California after a few years. And the trees don't seem to grow as well. So ideally, you can find a seedling of green sapote and then graft on it. But it's a very mammy-like fruit. And some people say they like it better than mamey. So lucuma and mamey are the ones to try, I'd say, if you're worried about cold first. And Canistel does okay for me, actually, if it doesn't get any frost. So it can take down to 32. It's just any ice crystal kills it. So under the redwood, it's fine, but in the middle of the yard, it would die. So that's one, like if the other ones do great for you and you want to experiment, sure, try that. But I wouldn't spend $100 on a tree before trying the other ones if you're a little cold.
I have a question for the lucuma one. How
Yeah.
do you like get the seed, or do you sell the seed, or how do you get it?
So I bought seeds and I had to wait a while for them to find them. I think I brought them through Tradewind Seeds or either Rare Palm Fruits, which are seed brokers. I've seen them. Then I saw them for sale at the what's it called? Not Fallbrook. Vista Farmers Market.
Exotica Nursery.
Exotica, yes. Stephen Spangler.
100 miles, but eventually I got plants.
It's better probably for the plants.
So
how long does it take, like the seed to germinate?
Oh,
for the
it's usually
lucuma?
it's usually within a week or two.
Oh wow,
It's just 5 to 7 years before you get flowers, I think.
yeah.
But if you graft it, it's faster. So star apples, they have been fruited in
I know those.
California. I don't recommend trying outside of a greenhouse. The plant is not cold hardy, and the fruit tries to ripen in winter. So the last one I have on here, and I really should have a cucurbits type slide too, is the nightshades. So a lot of the South American nightshades are very tasty. The tree tomatoes, there are good tree tomatoes, but they're cloud forests. So remember, again, you're going to want to try shade for these. Not every plant is going to make it. Some of them will be more heat resistant than others. And you're definitely going to pour some water on them every day in summer. But they will fruit usually if you can get them by that. Another trick is that they have big leaves, and you could try cutting the leaves in half. It's kind of drastic, but if it's wilting every day, this kind of it's a cost to the plant because it's not making enough food, but it's not losing as much water. The same thing with Naranjilla. In summer it does not have a good time and it needs water, but cutting the leaves back a little bit can help. That's going to be the case with most of these. The hull tomatoes at the bottom, those berries may be fine though, because they're from more arid places in Mexico sometimes. And the Cape gooseberries, they're commercial now, but you can either get seeds or grow those. And next to a house, they will stay perennial usually, even if they burn back a little bit. The ground cherries, there are some that have roots and they burn back on purpose, and they will come back in spring. So you just have to kind of experiment with those. The one problem is that you may have to wait a second year for some of the South American nightshades because they grow where there's not a bad winter usually. So they take their time and they don't really start fruiting until the second year sometimes. Some people get it within 18 months or a year, but I'm cold enough that they shut down in winter. So mine are just sitting there right now. Okay, so that's the Americas. Did you guys want something else now, Asia or?
Brian, we have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Deborah and Sean asked, this is for the entire group, if anyone has any of the yellow or orange colored tuna cactus available. And if you do, if you can put it in the chat box, please. Thank you. Buddy asked if sugar apples, it sounds like he has one growing in a pot. Buddy, if you are online, did you want to expand your question?
Yeah, I have one about 4 feet tall. It's growing in a pot. It's doing pretty good. I'm in the Coachella Valley, so we get pretty warm in the summer, and we get maybe 150 hours of chill time. And that's about it.
Yeah, so I have to like hedge some of my responses. Like, so I have grown sugar apple in a pot and I have fruited it. I did the self-pollination thing too. But it's not something that I like in a talk I will recommend that everyone just try unless they're prepared to lose it. So because some people will then go out and buy a $75 tree from a nursery and then be mad when it dies in winter because it got put in the ground, say in like
Right.
part of the Mojave where it was going to drop down at night. So yes, it's definitely doable. All those things on that slide I listed, and I should figure out a way to like make this into a PDF so you guys have the slides. Size is an issue, but I'll try that if you remind me. But all those species, I think, have been fruited in California. It's just sometimes there's asterisks by them, or like you need experience with the other ones. And then once you realize, well, I have to do it in a pot and I'll have to bring it in one day in winter to get it through the winter.
Right.
But yes, it's definitely doable. And so for instance, it sounds like you would likely be able to do Canistel too if you haven't, if you can do sugar apple.
Yeah, I'm building a greenhouse now, so that's where it'll end up at. I've already lost 2 lychee trees, so.
Yeah, so like I have those and they get through winter fine, but I don't necessarily recommend people buy them because someone in the same city as me has lost like some of the same species that I've kept for 5 years. And it just comes down to what part of the yard I keep them in. So open sky is bad. The worst year for me was actually it warmed up in January for 3 weeks and I had spring summer temperatures and everything started growing. And then there were a lot of fatalities as soon as it cooled down again.
Well, I lost mine when it got humid and really hot and they just shriveled up.
Yeah, I lose more in summer than I do in winter, honestly, because I get lazy with watering.
Right. Well, thank you.
I'm just checking how I am for time. Okay.
Brian, one last question before you take off to your next chapter is Sergio had a question on the Inga Fajoa. How tall does it grow and will it harm the house foundation if it's planted next to the house?
I kind of want to say that if you're growing ice cream bean, the Inga, do not plant it next to a house. I do not know if this for a fact, but it seems like the kind of thing I wouldn't want next to the foundation. The Fajoya, you could. So the Fajoya might take 50 years to become a tree shaped thing. It's probably going to be a bush, and it's not, the Fajoya is not something that will rip apart your foundation. The Inga may. I don't want to, based on I've seen them like the size of oak trees, like not little oak trees, like the big blue valley oaks that have a, 40-foot tall canopy and then 30 feet wide. And
I've seen them too. That's why I kind of worry. I don't want to, put on my house and 10 years after, it's going to be a mess.
So Inga is like, in a way, it's like white sapote or avocado. It's from these forests where they fight the other trees and they win to get into the sunlight. And so it's not going to take any prisoners when it's growing if it has the right conditions. But in Southern California, they can still get big. And a lot of people, they get so big, a lot of people actually, I see them after 5-6 years wanting to take them out because they just grew too big for them.
Yes.
So that's something to keep in mind. Now, most of these trees you can keep small, but you have to keep up on the pruning. So like white
Do they-
sapote, I've seen them kept at 8 feet. I've seen avocados kept at 8 feet.
Do they
But you
give
have
you
to,
fruit though?
you have to keep up on, and they fruit. You have to just keep, but you'll be
Okay.
pruning every year, and they'll be fighting you the whole for their whole life.
Wow.
So, yeah, and some varieties are definitely better than others to do that with. But yeah, so
Thank you.
okay. So is there anything
Did you have a
else?
question?
Oh, I just had a quick question. Oh, a couple things. So I grow black sapote down here. The one I have is called an Excalibur black sapote.
Oh, the
And
Excalibur from Excalibur Nursery. Okay.
yeah, and it's really good actually. It's sweeter than any other one I've had. Usually they're more like sweet potato like, not very sweet. This one's a bit more chocolate pudding like and more sweeter. Not really, doesn't really taste like chocolate, you know, so much, but definitely like a good one to grow. It's also self-fertile, so I don't have a problem with it pollinating. It always pollinates itself, and it's very cold hardy. That's another one I wanted to mention. I would not plant an Iga bean next to the house at all. You're right, because I have one and it's a monster. I mean, it's the biggest one in my yard. Another thing that I wanted to mention was too, I haven't had a lot of success by mulching. So mulching, not papayas, right? Because papayas, if they stay wet in their roots, they're not good. They'll die. But for the most part, keeping the roots warm, I think really helps to keep these subtropicals in my yard. Because for instance, I have like I have a Frederick's passion fruit, which is like a purple one with sour sweet orange inside. And that one I've had videos I've taken in the snow and I have fruit. So that one's pretty cold hardy too. I haven't, it snows kind of rarely, hails a lot, gets below freezing where I am. So I'm up in the mountains a little bit. So that one's, Frederick's passion fruit's a really good one to grow. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you though.
Right. So a good thing to keep in mind is that if you see these in the native forests, typically there's leaf litter on the ground, and that stuff decays and puts nutrients back in, and it also generates heat. So just like a compost pile, and it acts as an insulator. So if you check a lot of the arboretums you can go to in Southern California, you'll notice that they leave the leaves on the ground usually. That's usually on purpose. And it's important to make a distinction between the fruit trees that are more wild still, like a lot of the ones we talked about, and the ones that have been domesticated to the point where, well, they won't fruit unless you prune them. So a lot of the things like the stone fruits and the apples that need pruning, I would consider them like domesticated in the same way like cows are. Whereas some of these other fruit trees, they're more like, say, bison, where they're like still wild, even if you're keeping them in a pen. And they prefer those forest conditions still. And even if they've been domesticated, like say Cherimoya and Lucuma, who have undergone some from the Inca, they didn't necessarily put them in orchards where they're, babying them, like causing them to evolve, not to like need that leaf litter nutrients and stuff. So these are essentially forest trees still. So that's how you make a fruit forest, is that they prefer those conditions still. Sometimes those domesticated trees get diseases in fruit forest conditions because they're not like made to compete and have those pressures on them anymore. But anyway, yeah, so those are all things that probably are very good to keep in mind. So what area do you want to do next?
What are our choices?
Well, we have Mediterranean, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Africa.
Are you going to talk about elderberries?
We can go through this now if you want. We can do Mediterranean areas.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do
We'll
that.
Okay, so the Mexican elderberry, and by that I mean the California blue elderberry, people keep changing what they think it is probably the best one for fresh eating. And it's supposed to be one of the tastiest. The Andean one is also supposed to be good. I've got that one, but it hasn't fruited yet. It showed up at a Sacramento CRFG exchange once. Okay, so if you can find these and make sure you ID it right, because I've seen people post pictures of toxic privet and things like that. And is this elderberry? So don't just eat it until you're 100% sure. But what I do is I clip the berry clusters because you don't want to be pulling them off in the field. I freeze them, and freezing them makes it easy to remove the berries because the plant itself has, I forget the toxin name, Sambuca toxin or something like that. It has the genus name in it. I then refreeze it if they've thawed too much while I've been picking them off the clusters. They just fall off the clusters, and you can use a comb to like kind of like rake them off while they're frozen. I refreeze them because I don't usually use them immediately. I then microwave them when I'm ready to use them, and that causes them to burst. You can heat them if you don't have a microwave, but I microwave them because it explodes the berries usually and causes the juice to come out. I strain them, and you can repeat this if you think there's more juice to get. You have to be very careful though, because the microwaving really heats them up for some reason. Then you can press the berry mash, and once you have that juice, you can do whatever you want with it. So you can make jam, jelly, syrup by just adding the juice. You can make hard candy if you want. Cooking it, a lot of people say improves the flavor. It makes it more berry-like as opposed to the strong elderberryness of it. The one thing I should mention though is that pure elderberry juice is very, very strong. I realize that it's a little too strong for me, but diluted, it's very nice. So try a little bit of it before you do that. There's some question whether there's toxin in the seeds. Heat is supposed to destroy the toxin though. That's another reason for a boil. The California ones are supposed to have less of the toxins, but and I'm not using toxin in like some vague term. There's actually names for the toxins. They know what they are. I just don't remember them off the top of my head. But the heat's supposed to destroy some of that. A little bitter is okay, but if you taste a lot of bitter, that means don't bother with it. Something went wrong. Just like the bitter almond, you shouldn't be eating a ton of bitter. So pistachio. I don't have any pistachio uses but you can probably do pistachios where you are. They are high chill, but there are some lower chill ones too. They're just not that Peters or Peters is the male, Kerman is the female, but there are newer ones that are being released. And as long as they overlap with the flowers, they're fine. There are older varieties that are less low chill. These ones that are high chill come from Iran originally, whereas the lower chill ones will come from Southern Europe, Northern Africa, or anywhere closer to the Mediterranean. This is the one California native I left in, just because if you see these growing, our native roosts, you can suck on the berries and it's a lemon taste as you're hiking somewhere. You can make a lemonade type drink too by leaving them in water. Figs. Oh my God. You guys can do figs. I've seen figs made into jelly, jam, and wine. There are more fig experts than that could probably speak to you at some point. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them. Oh, so one recommendation though is if you see DFIC 0023, that's the variety name. It's a hybrid and it has a slightly different texture from a normal fig. That might be one to keep your eyes out for. It might be that virus resistant to that fig too, the fig virus. Okay, carob. So carob is something, have you seen those around? The trick is that just like any fruit, they're ripe at a specific time.
They are street trees all over Riverside.
Okay, so if they're astringent, they're not ripe. When the brown gets to the tip of the stem, that's when they're usually ripe, and so you can try a little bit. But if it's astringent, it's not ripe. Now, and if the thing is, they stay on some trees keep the pods on even if they're overripe, and they can be overripe too. So you need them when they're ripe. But how do you use these? Okay, so you can use them as flour. Now, I admit this is labor intensive and I don't have a good workaround yet, but I just break them up. And you can cut them with scissors and then try and break them up, remove the seeds. I've used pliers to crunch them. Where they do this commercially, they have machines to do it, and I don't have a good workaround yet. But the seeds aren't toxic, but you don't necessarily want them in your product. So you make kibble, and the kibble is just chips of carob, and you dry them. So I use a dehydrator. You can use an oven on a low setting. Then I use a blender to turn it into a powder. I usually have to blend it once, and then when I have enough, do a second blending. And it becomes a flour type thing, and you can use it in cooking. That's all there is. The most intensive step is turning it into kibble, honestly. Now, if you want the molasses is very honey-like because these carobs have over 50% sugar sometimes in them. You add the kibble to water, and I actually tested this. Soak them for about 24 hours, but beyond that, it doesn't increase much in sugar. I used a hydrometer, which you use in winemaking, to test how much solutes are in there, and I wasn't able to get much of an increase after that. And you risk fermentation starting if you leave it in the water around too long. So once you've soaked it in there, I then boil it with the kibble in it, say for about an hour. And then I remove the kibble, and then I just boil it down. And this takes a while. Traditionally, at least 4 hours, and they use bronze pots, which isn't required. You can just use a regular pot, but you boil it down and you evaporate the water, and it's going to get a honey texture, and it tastes like honey with kind of a caroby, chocolatey taste to it. And it's going to be the consistency of honey when you're done with it, and it's cool. And it's so sweet that you can keep it in the fridge for a while, and it shouldn't mold or anything because there's enough sugar in it that it's kind of antiseptic to things that want to eat it. Now, if you're like me and you're impatient sometimes, the cheating way is you add a little sugar. So adding a little white sugar to bump it up means that when you boil it off, it hits that point where it's like honey a little quicker, but that is cheating. And you have to be aware that when you put it in the refrigerator or cool it down, that if you put a little too much sugar in, it will start to crystallize. You can eat the little crystals like crystal candy, and they taste like carob, but that is a risk. So the traditional way, you just use the sugar from the carob. So those are the two ways, and you may want to buy it from a store first to see if you like it. Most people like the carob honey. Have you seen this growing around, myrtle? It's the one European guava species that the berries are not very good, but they make good things. So they're not very good for fresh eating, but they have a very nice, like, aromatic taste to them in the skin. And what you do is, so I think I saw that you guys had like someone that showed you how to make this at some old meeting maybe, but you soak them in a 30% more alcohol, as long as you want, and you can add the sugar or simple syrup before or after, and it sucks out the flavor, and then you get a myrtle flavored drink, and it's called myrtle. You can make the syrup by just boiling the berries in a simple syrup. You have to be careful though that if you boil it too much, you end up making hard candy when you cool it. And I did this once when I solidified it because I boiled it down and got it a little too hot. But if you want to make hard candy, you can do that too. Just like horehound, the flavor, some people think it's too medicinal, but some people really like it. And once you have the syrup, you can do whatever you want with it. So you can make jam, jelly. You just don't add as much sugar to the jam or the jelly. You use the syrup as your sugar source. So olives, I have a major problem with olive fly. But have you, there is an African species, but the fruit's not improved. So, I would use the European one. And there's also a Chinese olive species you could do this with. but it gets the olive fly too, and there's not much flesh on the olive. All I do is I make a 5% brine. I add the olives to the brine. You normally slit the olives to speed this up, but I did not this year. And you just wait, and you let things ferment, and the bitter compound, I guess, in the brine eventually unbinds to the olive, and you get olives. I like the fermentation way better, but I've done just the saltwater changes too. So walnuts. I have a problem getting walnut fruit because the squirrels get all the nuts. So one trick is if you take the fruit before they get it. So before the nut forms, you can make nocino. Same thing as the myrto. This one though, what you do is there's a compound that doesn't taste very good in the fruit. So you have to age it, and it breaks down eventually. In theory, light seems to, for me at least, seems to degrade it quicker. Now there's a different way. I've tried making syrup, but I don't know if it's going to work because you have to age out that compound again, and sugar syrup may not last long enough. But another thing to do is you cut off the skin of the walnut, the green walnut, and you soak it in water. And every day you change the water. And the trick is that you're waiting till the things that don't taste so good leach out, but the walnut flavor is still there. And if you overshoot it, you get very bland walnuts. But about after 7 changes or so, and it's hard to be exact, but you put it in sugar syrup as the last change, and you just store it, and then you can eat them straight. I've done it, but I overshot it usually, and I usually get something kind of bland. But it tastes really good if you get it right. So as far as walnuts, there's the English walnut, which is the easiest one to crack. But you can do this with black walnuts, which have a little stronger smell taste to them. You can do it with butternut, which may be worth trying. It grows in Northern California. Oh, cool. And pecan work too. So you can use the green pecan fruit, and a commercial Texas place actually makes a version of nocino with it. So any walnut family thing, you should be able to use the green fruit like this. I don't have this in the talk, but there's no point in doing it with almonds because you just get something kind of grassy tasting, but you can pickle green almonds in brine and vinegar. So that may be something in a future talk. So that's it for my Mediterranean area that didn't get sucked into other sections. Do we want to do another section, or are we?
It's actually 8:21 right now. Can I ask if there's any questions from our audience? You can put them in chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask them. Nick had a question or a comment on the chat that the pawpaw fruits are immune to juglone, the allelopathic chemical that trees like walnuts and eucalyptus produce as a defense mechanism. It's perfect to shade out the pawpaw as it grows best in shape.
Was that a question or a statement? I didn't hear though.
I think it was just a statement.
Okay. I had heard that too. Actually, now that I remember, like now that I'm thinking of once that was said, I think I've heard that too.
Sergio's asking where he can buy the plant of lucuma. Lucuma.
Let's see. I'm trying to remember if the actual plant. I bought a few plants from Ben Poyer in the San Diego chapter, as well as at a plant sale from the actual San Diego chapter at their Bancroft Garden once. That's the only plants I can remember off the top of my head. I've seen them for sale at Papaya Tree, I think, in the San Fernando Valley, but I've also heard they have waiting lists for a lot of the fruits there, so I'm not sure. I haven't bought that personally. Besides that, I haven't seen them really for sale from places. Seeds sometimes are available, but yeah, they're still kind of hard to get. I mean,
and then Alistair is asking if you know of any fruits for Southern California that are close to the British gooseberry.
wait, say that again, the end?
The British gooseberry.
Oh, so I know that Pixwell has been fruited in Orange County once. And that's a real gooseberry. Let's see, Glendale is a variety that's supposed to be very low chill, and that's a real gooseberry too. That's fruited in a very low chill area in Northern California, but that's still Northern California with cooler climates. Hinnomaki Red has also thrown fruit for me with below 500 chill hours in a place. And I do not know what the limit is on that one, but those are the 3 real gooseberries I've heard. I do not know any gooseberry analog that you could get away with in a subtropical climate, because the native gooseberries and currants do not necessarily taste like European ones. That's one. So I have that in one of my slides is what the one thing I've really failed with, and I don't recommend you guys try, is things far northern fruits and Arctic fruits. Even if they survive, they burn out in summer. Towards the end of summer, they're not made for that much good weather at the end. They're expecting this harsh winter to come after 3 months, and they just start to free run. So things like honeyberry, they survive fine, but then they start to look terrible. I know one person in San Diego who fruited one of them, but most of them, I hear of them dying in California. Same thing with like cloudberries, things like that. They just don't do well because our summers are too long and our winters aren't long enough. So they're like, I haven't found one. Sometimes with these marginal things, especially the Indian fruits, I can find one out of a batch of 10 to 50 seeds that's just a little more cold hardy. But with those ones, I've never found anything in a batch of seeds that can take a March to November like not cold period. They just start to look really bad, and like they want winter to come. And I've sent them all north to live if they didn't die for me.
Brian, this is Alistair. I missed the third name of the gooseberry type.
Oh, Hinnomaki Red, Glendale, and Pixwell. Of those, I know Pixwell has fruited in Orange County once. It is called a sour gooseberry, but it will sweeten up and turn red if you leave it on the bush. Glendale is very low chill, and it's made for the southern limit of gooseberry cultivation. That Hinnomaki Red is a Northern Europe one, and it's appeared to be low chill for me. The ones definitely not to try are Black Velvet. That does fine, but it will never fruit. It seems to be a zone 8 thing for real. Poorman showed chilling injury for me, even in a year with 900 chill hours. And there was one other I can't remember that did bad, but I kind of got out of experimenting with gooseberries. The goal was to try and breed the lowest chill ones together and distribute the seeds. But it's been so hard. If I get Glendale again, I might try that. But I basically Pixwell and Glendale are the 2 reliable fruiters in low chill areas for me. And you guys are probably lower chill than I am, so I'm very hesitant to recommend, and there's no analog to them. That's the problem that I found. So anyway, yeah.
Thank you.
And Brian, Elizabeth had posted that there's a Ribes species, or Ribes, R-I-B-E-S.
Yes, there are native species that would fruit for you probably, but most of them, even if they're called gooseberry, taste more like a currant, and they can be kind of bland, honestly. So I tried a spiky gooseberry that was in San Diego growing feral. It's a native, I think, but it was kind of bland. It was a little sweet, but most of the California ones, they're edible, but they're not that great. So they're in the bush food category, I think. They're nice ornamentals, but and you can eat them. But if it depends on how much space you want to waste for them. Like, I think I have time for one other section if it's African or Australian. The Asian one might be a little too long. If you wanted to hit, would you want to do Africa or Australia? No opinion?
Give a thumbs up.
Australia cover macadamia nut?
I have a slide on it, but it's not that rare, so I don't go into it that detailed. Do you want to do Australia?
Australia.
And really quick, when you're getting there, Elizabeth has some monstera plants. If anyone wants to chat directly with I'm going to butcher your name, Elizabeth. Is it Lasagne? Check her in the chat box. She's from the Orange County Foothill chapter if you want any Monstera deliciosa plants from Pasadena area. Thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, so Australia, it does have Mediterranean climates, but most of the fruit that we've seen in California actually comes from the rainforest or from forested areas. Things are surprisingly cold hardy though. Australia got nailed with ice ages at one point, and that may have something to do with the cold hardiness. A problem with the Australian fruits though is that a lot of them are made for birds with different tastes than humans. And it may just be something where we don't have like close relatives to humans that were living there when these things evolved. But a lot of people say a lot of Australian fruits don't taste great. And especially if they're blue, they usually were made for a bird then instead of a person. So one you might see around is lily pilly. If you're lucky, your lily pilly is a little sweet or berry tasting. If you're unlucky, it's a little astringent all the time. This is a fruit that you probably want to make things with. So jellies, jams, wines, things like that. The first two species I've listed are the most likely you'll see. Those are the ones that you will see as ornamentals. They can get thrips though in certain climates. So it's, without knowing if they occur where you are or not, it's hard to tell. Davidson plum is something that was surprisingly hardy for me. The leaves can look a little bad in winter, so that little bit of yellowing you get because it's just a little bit too cold for them to do everything. It goes away in spring though. Why this is interesting is that this one is a winter fruiter, so it will fruit in winter when most other things aren't fruiting. It's very sour, so you make jam out of it rather than eating fresh. I was once somewhere and they let me keep the seeds of one of these fruit because I wanted to try it. And so for the privilege of watching me eat something that was super sour, they let me keep the seed. And the thing is that these are almost too sour to eat fresh. Like, it's hard to say how sour they are, but they're enamel stripping sour in that sense, like worse than a lemon. But they make a really good jam. They fruit from the trunk too sometimes, which is kind of cool. They're also very vertical. So if you don't have space, you don't have, as long as you have the vertical space, they don't spread out much. And they kind of look like a Dr. Seuss tree. Every time I see this slide, I think I need a picture of the whole tree, and I always forget to put it in because they have very weird looking leaves. Some of them leave little like hairs in my skin though, not mine, but I touched one once and it made me a little itchy. Burdekin plum, this is something that will grow in California. It has an earthy plum-like taste to me. There are supposedly two versions. One of them is yellow fleshed like this or white fleshed, and one of them is red fleshed and is supposedly a little more acidic. I only know of 4 trees in California though, although I did see an Australian seed company selling these. And in theory, they ship to the US if you have the your small seed lot permit, which is free to get. So anyway, this is something that should grow in your area.
Yeah, one of our members has one. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah,
yeah,
one of our members, Larry,
I'm
has.
trying not to out anyone, like in case they don't want people begging for like fruit and seeds.
Well, you know,
but,
that's okay, but it's not that tasty, just to give a disclaimer, but when I like it is when it's dried. And I guess what Larry said is in Australia, they put it under the ground and bury it for a while or something like that.
yeah.
Okay.
So you have to blet these apparently, but I actually like the flavor fresh. I mean, not fresh, but after they've softened, bletted. I actually like them fresh. It's like an earthy plum to me. Maybe I'm like hyping it. It took me so long to find the fruit, I guess, that maybe I'm hyping it a little too much, but I actually like the flavor. The other place, so the 3 trees you can see publicly are at the LA Arboretum, and it's a cluster of males and females. And I tried one off the ground there. I'm not sure you're supposed to, but like kind of asked, and they're like, if you want to eat off the ground, go ahead, whoever asked. But it wasn't as good as the ones that your member grows in your chapter. But it was the kind with the red flesh, so it's supposed to be more acidic or something. It was also on the ground, so that could have been it. But I like these, but I can see like maybe I should be careful about hyping them, having only tasted 2 trees. So macadamia, if you have a problem getting nuts, it could be a pollination issue. Grafting these is very hard. I've had to have other people cut the wood because the wood is so hard. I had trouble cutting it with my knife and my hands. Also, they don't heal easily. Like when they heal, the callus is just barely there. But I've heard that people have fixed their low nut problems by either having a second tree put in, and in theory, that should mean grafting a second variety on would help. I will not recommend the Chilean hazelnut for you guys, just because it's from that South American Mediterranean area, and it's not as heat tolerant as some of the other ones. I've had problems with them in summer, but it's more an option for people who can't grow macadamia. But I guess that's what I'll say. Grafting them is very hard. The wood is very hard, but if you have problems, try getting 2 of them. Some people seem to have no problems with one, but sometimes it could be a pollination issue. And squirrels can take a lot of these. So if you're not watching the tree, they may rip them off before they're ready. The thing I'll plug that I also really like that I shouldn't plug, I guess, is bunya bunya. These are huge trees. So if you, they're not something you want on a small lot. The cones are huge. They fall from the top of the tree. They're 15 or 20 pounds at least. If there's 2, they pollinate each other though, and you get the cone falls apart into these flakes. Inside the flake is a wooden husk. Inside those wooden husks, if you're still willing to crack them, is a huge 1 inch long to 1.5 inch long pine nut. So it's a pine nut that's huge. And I've had them raw and roasted. Roasted is a little better because they're very piney raw. But they're, if you ever think that pine nuts aren't worth it because they're too small, these are worth it. Now the problem is that there was a lawsuit once because someone got nailed in the head by a pine cone falling in San Francisco, and a lot of the cities, for instance, I know these are in Riverside County, or they were at one point, but a lot of cities will like fence these off if they keep the tree because they don't want the cones falling. The other problem is if it's a lone tree, it will make cones sometimes, but inside these wooden husks is nothing. So, and you find that out after you get the cone and crack it open. This one actually came, I checked this one from where I was teaching in student at Sonoma State, and they had 3 trees there. These get big. So it's more of something, if you find a tree and notice a cone, it might be worth trying the nuts. but they're really good and they're worth it because they're big. So yeah. So that's my little bunya plug. The monkey puzzle tree also makes edible nuts. They're just a little smaller. Okay, that's Australia. I think we're probably out of time.
Sure.
Are we out of time or any?
We're at 8:38. Does anyone have any specific questions, Brian?
I have a question. African, I actually was probably on the side of hearing more about African plants because I know less about them. But I have what's called a Tokoyena bulata. Do you know what that is?
I want to say that I've heard the name before. Can you describe it a little bit?
You know, it's from seed, so I'm not sure what the fruit is or anything like that. It's really small. I got it from this nursery in LA, and apparently it's a little more cold, like not as cold tolerant. So I'm afraid to plant it outside the greenhouse. But yeah, there's that, and then there's another plum that's pretty common, and I got from him. They're both African trees. I wanted to ask you a little bit about any like notable mentions, you know, something that you would recommend growing here that it's African.
So of the things that I can do Africa in 3 minutes. Okay. I've been experimenting with various things. Of the things I'm experimenting with, monkey orange seems to be the hardiest. It will lose its leaves and it gets hardier as it gets bigger. But it seems to be something that tastes good, that may be doable. That's on the experimental side. Definitely K-apple. That's something you should try. It's good. And Marta probably talked about that.
Oh yeah, it's exotica. I have. It is good. It tastes kind of beady, but this tree is so spiky though, huh?
Yeah, but I have seen someone sleep in it once, but other than that, it keeps out animals and people. There's a lot of African persimmons. They're all usually cold hardy by California standards. They're just not big fruit usually. I recently found out there's a jackalberry in the Bay Area, and it's a female that bears fruit without a male, which means it would be seedless. So that may be one to try, jackalberry. The natal plum and the is another, like a hedge that grows around Southern California. If you find a colder hardy version, some of them have good fruit. The problem is that they're selecting them for hedges, not fruiting trees.
Yeah, I eat them on hedges around town. I find them and I eat them. They have a really latexy bit on the outside of them, right?
Yeah, if you wait till they're absolutely ripe, the latexy isn't that bad. African tree fuchsia is another one that bears a lot of like grape-like fruits. They're black when they're ripe. I can send your chapter some seeds if you remind me in spring, late spring.
Awesome, that'd be great. Yeah.
Someone has to remind me though. Jambalin and African waterberry look like they are decently hardy, but I can't say, I haven't hit their limit yet. Waterberry tastes like sweet water, which I thought was kind of insipid at first, but I've come to like it. Jambalin has non-astringent forms, but I haven't found them really in Southern California, although I've seen people claiming to sell them. They get to be big though.
Have you heard of
Marula? An African medlar may be possible, but not everyone. So the thing to think about with these species is I got 50 seeds and I had 5 to 10 survivors after the first year, and it's been whittled down a little bit. So not everyone is cold hardy, but some of them, say if they have genetics from like Southeast Africa or the bottom part of the range, they're starting to get cold hardy again. The other thing is that a lot of South African species would, if you find seeds, they will survive in Southern California most likely. Of that toad tree I list here, there's actually a better species to try called Montana, because it's from a mountain, I guess. These all grow in Southern California, and I have grown some in Northern California. the first thing on the list, I haven't actually been able to obtain viable seeds yet. It just should be zone 9. The desert date does not have much flesh on it, but tastes good. It's at Fullerton. South African plum is the plum with the slightly racist name. And it is around Southern California. Some of them are okay, and some of them are good. They're just small mango berries most people think aren't worth it. Uganda powder flask tree is a hard-shelled citrus. I have it. I have not fruited it yet because it takes about 20 years from seed. And I've got about 5 more, I guess, before it tries. Snuffbox tree grows in Southern California, but I do not know how cold hardy it can be. So I'm only going to say zone 10 for now. And I think that's a quick version of African fruits. How about I will try, I may have to split it up, but I will try and give you guys the PowerPoint and PDF, and you can just email me if there's something I didn't hit.
Oh, the last thing I had a question was Montungia calabura?
Yes.
That's African, right?
I thought it was American, but so that is something it's actually one of the, it should be tropical, but it's such a weed tree that it's able to survive places it shouldn't, because it just has this growth rate, and it's kind of a live fast, die young tree. But the fruit is good, actually. It does have a cotton candy taste, except for the skin, with enough heat.
Yeah, they're really.
I didn't get I cut out there, but did we lose someone?
It was Nick.
Hey Brian, can I share your email address in our chat room?
Sure. It's probably better to do email me directly. But right now, if you email the Golden Gate chapter, it goes to me anyway. So either one's probably fine. But the personal one's probably better for this. Yeah, so if my stuff produces enough, for that tree fuchsia, if you guys want to try that, just remind me to send some seeds down in late spring or something. But yeah, so any questions? So did I get all the questions, or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Fabulous. Wow. I couldn't take my notes fast enough. So the good thing is that we are recording this session, and it will be posted up in YouTube under Quirk Swanner, Swanner. He's our vice chair, and so he'll upload this, and you can look for it on his YouTube channel. Well, actually, he's on vacation, so maybe in a couple weeks.
So one thing though is if I give you a copy of the slideshow, I should just mention I did not hit up on roasting ginkgo nuts. I just want to for liability purposes, I want to make sure ginkgo nuts are slightly toxic, and it's a heat resistant toxin. So heating them does not destroy it. So if you look online, you'll see that they recommend not eating more than a certain amount a day, depending on how heavy you are. So just for my liability, I put directions in how to roast them, or at least how I do, but do not eat 30 at a time, because it's not good. But you can eat some, but not a lot. And it's weight dependent, because it's the heavier you are, the more you could eat, I guess. But don't look into it before you do it, just so you know what you're doing.
Hey Brian, on the ginkgo though, you need 2 trees. You need a male and female.
Yes. So ginkgos do come in male and female. They try not to plant the females in city lots because of the smelly fruit. But occasionally one changes sex. So and if they're seedlings, some females slip through usually.
A I find it very difficult to actually find a female. I've been asking for about 8 years now, and none of their nurseries know, or they don't tag them, or they don't know that if it's a male or female. And they do grow tall, so it's not something that you want to plant next to your house, but they are also slow growers.
Yeah, so I know of a few females around here. I have not been able to propagate them very well. I think I used to try and graft them, but that was before I was like decent at grafting. And I think that you probably need to do the same thing as persimmons and pawpaws, where you need the rootstock growing and awake and the scion still dormant. And I have not tried to root them yet. But if you have the rootstock, I could probably get female wood from you. It's just one of the trees is not in a good area as far, so it may take a little bit. Because it's not somewhere like you want to go at night or when there's a lot of people around, I guess. So, but I do remember that, what's that nursery? Burnt Ridge Nursery in Oregon sells females, I believe. And they didn't used to be expensive. None of the places that I've mentioned are necessarily endorsements. I'm just telling you where I've got things. But I have ordered nut trees from them, and it wasn't super expensive, but they were small. But I do seem to remember female ginkgo trees. Although due to the pandemic, every place seems to be out of everything as far as fruit trees and edibles. So yeah.
And if anyone was around in our meeting when we made the Nocino, I had to have my husband crack open the bottle. This is delicious. This is the walnut liqueur. I think I made it with the Everclear, which is super strong. So that's why I've only taken 2 sips. It's tasty. It's tasty. So I highly recommend trying to make that with your green walnuts. And just remember, it stains. I have a nice yellow stain on my countertop right now.
Oh, so just a word of warning to like, so the liquid, you'll read about how the liquid stains skin when you make it, and I didn't care. Turns out that it's also corrosive a little bit, and it started to take my skin off after cutting the 100th walnut, and it was burning. So do wear gloves, even if you don't care if your skin gets dyed. For the people who do not want it at 40% alcohol or 100% alcohol, you have to be very, very careful. But if you heat it, you can boil out the vast majority of that stuff, and it turns into just a drink you have to use right away. But there is a fire risk doing that. You do not want to catch it on fire. So you can boil it out, but remember, it does not boil at the normal water temperature. I did that once just to see if I could do it, and it tastes the same, but it's a very, very low version of that then. Just to see, I wouldn't say give it to kids, but it's at least you couldn't taste anything other than the water and the walnut at that point. But it did take 5-6 hours of it boiling and watching it. So I did it like in a lab situation when I had a time to burn, but it was it's possible. So like you do not have to have it at 40% or like 80% or whatever that's at right now. But
well, we appreciate living through your experiences, Brian. Hey, we have some more chats. It's 8:52. If anyone has to take off, please feel free to. Brian, how's your time? Do you have a few more minutes?
Sure.
Or do you need to run off? Okay.
I'm fine.
You are getting lots of praise and applause in our chat. Thank you for your time. Brian's recipe brings up a version of preparing the nuts during a scuba session. Alistair, what is that about?
It's because on his recipe it says recommend doing this underwater.
Oh, that's because the ginkgo stinks. So if you put it underwater, you don't smell it when you squeeze out, and you don't get the stuff stuck on your hands.
Okay, that's the vision that's still brought to my mind. Question, does ginkgo graft easily at all?
I had no luck with it, but that was when I wasn't very good at grafting. Like I haven't tried in 10 years. I suspect that I did it too early because I did it as soon as the buds broke on the rootstock. And with other species, I've had much better luck once things have actually leafed out more.
What was crossing my mind was because Lisa was saying she'd been looking for 8 years to get a female plant. Presumably, if as she's wandering around, she finds a particularly smelly ginkgo tree, that would be a female. So some cuttings of that put onto her male plant might give her
Right.
what she needs.
So in the meantime, my ground squirrels ate the roots off my male plant, and I still haven't found any stinky female trees around Riverside.
Yeah, if you remind me, I can probably get wood of a female. I can't say if it will be a good quality nut, but I've used them and cooked them. One of the trees was destroyed by a city recently, but I still know of 2 or 3 locations where I can find a female. I may need to do it like when they're fruiting because I don't necessarily remember which tree it was unless there's fruit on it. But I can probably get wood. I just don't remember what the best time for rooting was not grafting, and I do not remember what time that was. So I'd have to figure that out. But I can probably get a sign or 2 of female wood off a city tree at some point.
Let's stay in touch because come August we have the Festival of Fruit up in Santa Rosa, so we may be passing through there, and I can stop off and pick up something.
Okay, and a lot of those northern things are very common up there, so it's possible a Redwood Empire person would know like things nearby the actual like festival place.
Elizabeth is saying that the easiest way to get ginkgo nuts is to go to a Chinese, Taiwanese, or Hong Kong market and buy them already processed in the dry food section. Thank you, Miss Elizabeth. And so all right. Thank you for the wealth of information. This is so fun, and I really enjoy being part of the California Rare Fruit Growers because there's such a wealth of information. And Brian, you and your fellow growers are just constantly experimenting and finding new things. And when you tour and you travel around the world, when we can travel around the world, there's just really fun stories. So I definitely appreciate your time. And on behalf of the Inland Empire chapter, thank you very much for visiting us tonight. And everyone, if you can find your reaction button, let's give him a round of applause or a thumbs up. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Oh, so the one thing I didn't share too was I have my sources actually written down where I got the seeds or the plants. So if you email me and remind me, like I can look it up and actually tell you this is where I got those lucuma seeds. This is where it was. This was potentially the date. So if there's something you saw that you're interested in, I can at least tell you where it's growing or find it or where I bought it. So feel free. I mean, don't be shy about asking. So, and if I forget to get back to you for some reason, just do it again. Because there's a lot of CRFG emails from various chapters coming in right now. So don't be shy about asking if you want that information.
And Brian, you're up at the Golden Gate chapter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to verbalize, if we post this video on YouTube, it's going to be international and open to the public. So I don't want to verbalize your email, if that's okay, unless you want to.
Yeah, that would be good actually, because there's a lot of junk coming through, but I mean, feel free to share it with the chapter or. Okay.
Okay, I don't have any more questions coming in.
I have a quick question. This is Alistair, Lisa. Is it proper for me as a member of the Foothill chapter to advertise for Saturday's Foothill chapter Zoom meeting we're going to have at 10 o'clock.
Go for it.
Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have the link that will take people directly to it, but I will put my email in the chat. And if people want to send me, if they're interested, they can send me an email. And when I get the link, I will share it.
So you're having a chapter meeting this Saturday
This Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Yes.
at 10, so February 6th at 10 a.m. And what is it about? What's the topic?
The speaker is Jeff Warner, and I did hear what it was about, and I've heard him speak before, and he has been an excellent speaker. I don't remember the explicit topic.
Is it mangoes of some sort?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay.
Which has me slightly muttering and grumbling because that's something of near and dear to my heart.
Excellent. Okay. So we can find, as this meeting is ending, I'm going to drag on a little bit so people can go to our chat room. And Alistair has put in his Gmail address there, so find it there. And then he will send you the information about the Foothill Rare Food Growers meeting this Saturday at 10. And is it lasting for an hour, hour and a half?
I'm going to guess an hour and a half to 2 hours. And it turns out that I just found an email. So that's the link. And the topic is Alternatives to Citrus Workshop.
So feel free to copy the link, everyone, or grab your phones and take a picture. You can also email Alistair and get this information. Is it posted on your website?
I'm not sure about that. Martin or Elizabeth may be able to speak to that.
Ooh, I just got a text from Martin that he can forward the information to me. Wonderful, wonderful. Does anyone else have any announcements regarding CRFG or this session? Okay. Well, it's 9 o'clock. I don't know if it's a school night for anybody or a stay-at-home teaching school night. But thank you so much, Brian, for your time. I appreciate you. We all do. Have a wonderful, safe February as fast as this year is going already. And for any of our members or guests that would like to come out to the Hurupa Mountain Cultural Center this Saturday, remember we're going to be pruning, and then we can work on skill development with grafting from a recent sign exchange. So meet us at the gate at the Hurupa Mountain Cultural Center. That's where the big metal dinosaurs are off the Highway 60 at Pyrite area. And we'll see you there at 9 a.m. sharp. The gates are locked to the public, so we do need to be escorted in. And please bring your own sharp grafting tool. We might have some extras available. Your pruners, loppers, as well as any sanitizing solution as well. And we are wearing masks and facial coverings on site and social distancing. So we want to stay healthy so that we can eat all this scrumptious food. So hopefully we'll see you on Saturday. And with that, so our next meeting is before we sign out. But wait, there's more. There's always more. All this goodness. March 4th, which is the first Thursday in March, is our next meeting from 7 to 8:45, and we'll be talking about olive varieties. Different olive varieties, how to prune, how to propagate, which ones may be best for table grapes and oils. All right, so we'll see you then. Look for us on facebook.com/IECRFG. And with that, have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next month. Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much.
No, wait.
Bye.
Hold
Thanks,
on.
everyone.